welcome to episode 7 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. What are little girls made of?
In this week's episode, Kirk leads an away mission to the planet XO3 in an effort to retrieve renowned scientist Dr. Roger Corby. His fiancée is the Enterprise's Nurse Chapel, and she too is part of the expedition. After a pair of crewmen die in suspicious circumstances, Kirk finds himself in a difficult situation, while Chapel tries to work out whether Corby is the man she remembers.
The flesh has warmth. There's even a pulse. Physical sensation.
How convenient.
Good evening, Ian. How's the flesh?
Nice and warm today, Gerry. How about yourself?
Sensational.
Always good to me. Fleshly warm.
This is a very interesting, a fascinating episode, I think.
I'm glad you think so.
Maybe not for the right reasons.
Well, it raises a number of questions that we can get to in due course.
It raises a number of issues which I think are relevant in 2020, along with a number of issues which I think are still relevant, but not for the right reasons.
Okay, better episode than last week though. Yeah.
Would not be hard. and what I should say as well is that last week we had the Murd's women who were of the 60s. This week is a different kettle of fish as far as I'm concerned.
More your type of fish.
Oh yeah.
Fair to say. Shall we get to it?
We shall.
Okay, crack on.
We're up on the bridge. I do like a bridge start.
Well, it's familiar, isn't it? It gets us settled into the episode.
And we hear Kirk tell Christine that the Enterprise is entering standard orbit of a planet and it won't be much longer. So we can clearly see that she is invested in some way. Yeah,
she's not normally on the bridge, so there's obviously something specifically relevant to her going on.
Of course.
There's a note made here by Kirk that she, Nurse Chapel, has given up a career in bioscience to serve on the ship.
Yeah, a bit of exposition we have. But she has other things on her mind. She says that she knows he is alive down there, to which Kirk reminds her that it's been 5 years since the last communication. So, yeah.
Kirk's basically saying, probably dead.
Yeah.
Don't get your hopes up.
Pretty much. Now, as you said, she's given up a career in research to join them. So, from what we soon discover, did she join the Enterprise to look for this person?
It's never made 100% clear, but I would guess not.
It would be a long shot.
Yeah. It may well be that her being on the ship would be a deciding factor if there were two vessels nearby, but it's more likely that it's just a coincidence that this happens to be the mission they're on.
So could the Enterprise be considered a bit of a French Foreign Legion, where people who have who want to disappear or who have had traumatic experiences, lost loved ones, fallen out with spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends, and they decide they'll go on this mission for 5 years to get away from it all?
Yeah, I don't think you get to choose to be on the Enterprise. I think it's more or less the flagship of the fleet. You would have to be selected based on performance, or selected specifically by the captain, I would imagine. I don't think you can just say, I want to be on the Enterprise, and then you get assigned there.
So is no one on the Enterprise just like a dog's body? There's no manual labourers who are just there for grunts, I suppose?
Well, I think there might be. We saw some folk earlier on, remember, that weren't wearing uniforms in some of the initial episodes, and I suggested they might just be staff that aren't officers. So I would imagine, because you'll need the place kept spick and span.
Okay, back to the current situation. After Kirk mentions it's been 5 years, Christine, I think she's still got a confidence in Roger's ability to survive.
Yeah, we're going to find out about Roger in a moment when Spock gives a bit of a background.
Yeah, he's got some facts. Can you remember what they were?
No, not really. We got a good computer screen image of Roger.
Yeah.
And some facts about the planet. I think the planet's been cooling. The sun has been dimming or cooling in itself, and it's led to the planet's surface becoming uninhabitable.
I think apart from that, it's been compared favourably to Earth. I think the atmosphere and the gravity, etc., is habitable, or would have been, but it is certainly the temperatures decreasing slightly. Global warming or cooling.
Cooling, the star's going out, so there's not as much heat reaching the planet.
Mm-hmm.
I think perhaps supporting my position that the posting of Christine Chapel to the Enterprise is not on the basis that this mission was happening. Kirk makes reference to 2 previous expeditions to recover Dr. Corby.
That's true.
And they failed.
They did.
So it's all doom and gloom. It looks like this is going to be a very short episode.
Tell me about Dr. Corby. What is he known as?
He's an archaeologist, isn't he? But he's like a leader in the field. Spock compares him to, is it Pasteur or somebody?
I wasn't aware of that term until this episode. What's a Pasteur?
Well, Pasteur, is that not the name? It's like Louis Pasteur, leader in his field.
Comparable to Tony Robinson, you would say then?
Yeah. Corby is the Tony Robinson of that century.
Does he have a cunning plan?
Well, you say that just as all hope appears to be lost before they've even bothered to go down and check for him, they start to receive a message. Uhura reports that he's on comms.
That was convenient. Timely.
Yeah, he's fitting right at the end of the scene.
Almost as if it's been scripted that way.
We get the credits. Actually, before we get the credits, what did you make of that look on Chapel's face when she heard him?
Didn't make anything of it.
I wasn't sure if was she shocked or relieved, or she certainly didn't look happy or excited.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I think shocked and relieved. Shocked primarily, you would be.
Yeah, because even though you're holding out hope, maybe the rational part of your brain is telling you he's probably not alive.
Yeah, at this point, you're not jumping about for joy, thinking everything's going to be fine. It's a shock to the system.
Maybe a veneer of professionalism. Anyway.
Captain's log, 2712.4. And we're told that Corby has been located on XO3 and survived in the underground ruins left by the planet's former inhabitants. So in this case, I think the log served a purpose.
Yeah, it brings us up to speed and sets the scene for what's going to come.
Back to the bridge. Kirk communicates with Corby, telling him that they're about to beam down. He starts to tell him about Christine, but it's not the reaction I suppose he was expecting. No,
Corby immediately insists that Kirk come down alone because there's an extraordinary matter he will need to decide upon.
Yeah, a big decision that he may have to make. And Spock is understandably perturbed by the request and asks Christine if she is sure it is Corby that she heard.
She is sure.
How can she be so sure?
She recognises his voice.
How does she communicate this to Spock? Her certainty, her surety.
She asks him if he's ever been engaged.
And this amuses Kirk.
Yeah, and Spock enigmatically does not respond.
Okay, so question here. It's almost as if what they're saying here is that he is a Vulcan or has Vulcan heritage. Therefore, he has no emotion such as love, and it'd be ridiculous for him to pair off. But his parents were married.
Yeah.
So it's not like...
No, I think it's just a cheap joke at his expense, because I think, spoilers for later on, we'll find out that he's not entirely unengaged.
Ah.
But anyway, we'll come to that in, I don't know, season 2 or something.
Okay.
It's interesting. Kirk tells Corby that Chapel's coming with them, and he's amazed to hear her voice, and she reassures him everything's okay. But then Uhura and Chapel share a moment as she's leaving the bridge.
Tell us about that.
Uhura leaves her station to give her a sort of an embrace and a kiss, and say it's almost like a celebration of sorts. Yeah,
so it's clear that Uhura knows about... This isn't something that Christine has kept secret from the rest of the...
It implies that they're friends as well.
It does, yeah.
A very brief scene in the transporter room. Before we
get there, did you mention then that Christine has been invited down?
Well, Kirk tells Corby that she's coming. It's not left open to debate.
Yeah, but at this point it changes his attitude, which I think is important, because from what we come to, he's sort of learning as he goes that how he's going to react or should react.
And then, like I say, brief scene in the transporter room, and we then see Kirk and Christine outside these caverns on the planet's surface.
We do. Let's go back to the transporter room. I know it's a brief scene, but there were some randoms beaming them down to this very cold looking planet.
Scotty's got a long weekend.
Yeah, so anyone can work this.
Well, anyone trained can work it. I think senior staff and any engineering people. We don't see Scotty in this episode. We don't see Dr. McCoy in this episode. We probably missed them.
Do we see Sulu?
No. There's another random Japanese guy on the bridge though.
Okay.
Much older one, substituting. It's like old Sulu.
Down on XO3, they're confused as to why Corby is not there. So, Kirk requests that 2 security men are sent down.
I think it's quite prudent. Normally you would see Kirk being a bit more gung-ho. Let's just go into this cavern and see what happens. But this is a fairly intelligent and by-the-book response.
When they arrive, he tells one of them called Rayburn to wait outside and for the other Matthews to join them as they set off looking for Roger.
Yeah.
And we're in the caves now, the cavern. Or caverns?
Caverns.
Yeah.
Like where the Beatles were discovered.
As they progress, Christine nearly falls into a pit.
Kirk pulls her back from the edge.
And then they're blinded by a light. We're blinded as well as viewers.
Nice little effect there.
It was. Followed by the appearance of who?
Dr. Brownie Brown.
Doc Brown.
Yes.
88 miles per hour. Okay.
That's probably where he got his name from. Yeah, it's Dr. Brown, who Christine calls Brownie, which is the English of Bruni, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Who is he?
He is an assistant of Dr. Corby's.
Yes. But before they can talk, they hear Matthews scream.
Yeah, and the scream seems to go on quite some time as he falls into a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
That's another one of those things that you don't really encounter as much in your adult life as you did suspect you might as a child. Bottomless pits.
We were talking about this type of thing the other day. What was the other 2 things that you'd have fear about as a kid?
Yeah, quicksand and spontaneous combustion.
Yeah.
You worry about them as a 12-year-old, but they never really seem to touch your adult life much.
Kids these days are more worried about, I don't know, what are they worried about these days?
Running out of battery.
Yeah.
Probably.
Who's on TikTok? Who's got more followers?
Let's not talk about the kids anymore.
What we see at this point is a monster-like creature. This huge, lurching creature.
Kind of slinks away as well as he can.
What's Brown's response?
It's a very unemotional response, isn't it?
Not very sympathetic.
He says that there's no hope for the crewman, he's lost. And Christine seems quite perturbed by this. I think she's also a bit surprised by Brown's response to her.
Yes, because she was expecting, or is expecting, a more familiar response.
Yeah, Kirk's already on alert, as we know from earlier, and he checks with Christine that Brown should know her well, and that this is an unusual response.
So after a beat, he puts on a smile and calls her by her name before introducing himself, which is an odd thing if you already know each other.
Yeah. Kirk speaks with Rayburn at this point, and just checks that there's been no activity at the entrance, and confirms that they'll check in hourly.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he's off that message, Rayburn is attacked by the same man or creature that we saw slinking away from, is it Mitchell, the other one?
Matthew's
death.
Yeah, it looks like he's being strangled.
It's not going to go well for him because I don't think he's got anything like the capability he would require to fight this guy off.
No chance.
I say guy, it's quite an androgynous creature.
Well,
anyway.
We also should mention that I think just before that happened and after Brown's unorthodox responses, Christine tries to, not cover for him, but tries to explain this behaviour by saying that, being down here for 5 years with limited interaction would, and to an extent she has a point. Well, I'm sure it changes your character.
So she's got this expectation of what she's going to find in these caverns, and it's being challenged, so she's fighting to hang on to, find justifications to keep her hopes alive that things are going to be normal.
Yeah. We're now back with Kirk and Christine, where we hear Brown update them on what Corby has been up to.
Dr. Corby has discovered that as their sun dimmed, the inhabitants of this planet moved underground from an open environment to this dark world. When you were a student of his, Christine, you must have often heard Dr. Corby remark how freedom of movement and choice produce the human spirit. The culture of XO3 proved his theory. When they moved from light to darkness, they replaced freedom with a mechanistic culture. Dr. Corby has been able to uncover elements of this culture which will revolutionize the universe when freed from this cavernous environment.
They replaced freedom with a mechanistic culture. That sounds like the start of a horror novel.
Mm-hmm.
Which it could well be, I suppose.
Yeah, this has certainly got horror vibes to it.
Themes and the music as well.
And I think you've got a bit of trivia later on which will add to that.
Of course.
We are now at, I suppose, Corby's quarters, or the living quarters of these people. And a door slides open to reveal who?
Andrea.
Wow. A stunning brunette in a revealing get-up.
Yeah, obviously, they're short of material down here. They can't afford to build her a proper outfit.
Luckily.
We've got trivia about that as well later on.
And it's clear that Christine is not overly impressed.
She's immediately defensive, isn't she?
You would be. I think your fiance's been down here for 5 years with Andrea.
Yeah, well, he comes out and she does kiss him and they have a sort of a reunion. But,
well, she knows, Andrea knows, firstly, we find out she knows who Christine is.
Yes, obviously she's been talked about.
Mm-hmm. And also Andrea says that she appreciates Kirk bringing Christine, Corby's fiancée, to him. So she's trying to show that she's not jealous or has any issue with Christine.
Well, is she? Yeah, maybe that's right. Or maybe she's saying what she's been told to say.
Yeah.
In any event, Corby concludes his embrace with Chapel and introduces himself to Kirk.
Yes, but again, I think we shouldn't rush over this interaction between the pair of them before we get to Corby, because Christine is understandably, she's very prickly and notes that she doesn't recall an Andrea, so she's not heard about her before.
Who are you?
But Andrea, in fairness, she responds quite patronisingly by saying that she's exactly as described by Corby, and it's no wonder that he missed her.
Yeah, let's see how this goes.
Okay, so Corby appears.
Yeah.
They have a little embrace, quite passionately actually, which is good. And there does appear to be genuine affection here.
Absolutely, from both of them.
He apologises and introduces himself to Kirk.
Yes, and he also apologises for the death of Matthews.
Yes.
Death of Matthew. I'm never going to get that.
That doesn't matter. I could never get, what was it, a few weeks ago, was it Tormelon?
You've still not got it, yeah?
No, I've not. Anyway, and it's interesting to note at this point that Kirk, we'd heard about it earlier on, I think, I'm not sure we mentioned it, but he is clearly in awe of this genius.
Well, yeah, he's a renowned leader in his field. He's not just any old scientist.
In fact, did Kirk not say that his work was required reading at the academy?
He did.
And Kirk shows this. He is very, very reverential and respectful towards him.
Absolutely. Kirk wants to check in with Rayburn at this point, so he asks Corby to put together a list of things that they need to take from here. An inventory, almost.
Yeah, now this is a point where things start to go a little wrong, because at this request, I think Brown pulls out his gun.
Well, not immediately. So what happens is Corby's a bit reluctant, says he wants to speak to Kirk one-to-one, and then Kirk says it'll have to wait because Rayburn's not answering, so he needs to contact Spock. Mm-hmm. At which point, Brown pulls out what looks like a remote control or something.
Yeah.
But apparently is a weapon.
AA battery powered.
Yeah, it's a pocket phaser, essentially.
That's all you need.
Yes.
Set to stun. Set to nip.
Christine is aghast at this. She asks Roger to intervene, but he's on board with Brown's approach.
Yeah, he tells him that it's for the best and that it might be that there are things discovered down here that are so important that he should wait to be, I suppose, fully briefed and brought up to speed and then make a decision about what you want to do.
Yeah, he assures Christine that Kirk won't be hurt.
Roger then instructs Andrea to restrain Kirk.
Kirk's not having it.
See, it's an odd one as well. If you are passing her off as a normal woman down there, why would you be asking her?
Well, I think they're working on the assumption that Kirk won't resist.
Right. So it's just a case of lead him somewhere or take him to... Okay. But that's not what happens. It gets messy.
It does, because Kirk tries to escape using Andrea as a shield, and he shoots back at Brown.
Yes, he easily overpowers her and takes her weapon. And there's a bit of damage to Brown.
Well, he's dead. Right. So you could say that.
Yeah, but I've got a problem here.
Yeah.
He's been restrained, Kirk. He's been, I suppose, held against his will, if you want to look at it like that.
Uh-huh.
And all that Corby has done is ask and indicate to Andrea to perhaps take Kirk somewhere else.
Yeah.
And his reaction is to grab her gun and kill someone.
Yes. Because he's being held at gunpoint and it's not meant to be this sort of situation. His alarm bells are all ringing.
Yeah, but wait and see. I mean, there's been no real aggression here. It's not ideal, but he just killed someone.
Yeah, because he wants to be proactive. He doesn't like having to react to things that are going on around him. He wants to be in control of the situation.
I'm not sure if that's...
You think he's overreacted?
Yeah, what is it, necessary force? I'm not sure.
So we don't know what setting the phaser was at. Mm-hmm. Because what we find out here is that Brown is not a man.
No.
He's a robot man.
Yes, his stomach area is torn open and we can see all sorts of microchippery and wires. Good old-fashioned Android technology.
Yeah, so maybe it was a stun setting that just didn't work well with robots.
Yeah, but Kirk wouldn't know what the setting was of the gun.
He maybe did, though. If it's a standard issue type, he would probably be able to see straight away.
Okay, giving him the benefit of the doubt, I see.
Well, he's an expert in these sort of things. Unfortunately for Kirk, though, even after shooting down Brown, he's not able to escape because the large creature stops him, the one that killed the red shirts earlier.
Yeah, he enters and lifts Kirk up above his head onto the wall. That's a move that lets you know who's in charge, who the boss is.
It looked quite well rehearsed, though, the two of them.
Yeah. We head back up to the bridge. We're not up in the Enterprise much this episode.
No.
But we are just now. Surprisingly, Spock receives a communication from Kirk.
What were you thinking at this point when Kirk's contacting the Enterprise?
I was thinking of Terminator 2.
Were you?
Well, no. When Kirk's contacting the Enterprise, I'm assuming that he's doing this under duress.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tells Spock everything's going to be fine. They'll be back up in 48 hours. They've got a few things to chat through.
And we see that it's not Kirk at all.
We do, yes. It's Ruck who's putting on the voice, like the T-1000.
Indeed.
But Spock, I think, senses that something isn't quite right.
Yes, he asks Kirk if he's feeling okay, if there's any problem, and Corby warns the real Kirk not to shout out or to cause any problems.
Yeah. And so Spock has no choice but to let things pass for the moment.
Yeah, but his alert is up now, I would say.
Yeah.
The whole situation seems dodgy. Experienced officers like Kirk and Spock aren't just going to let things sail.
We are now at, I suppose, Corby's lab.
Yes, he asks Kirk to trust him. He's not going to do that, though.
He tries to justify his actions based on his reputation, and so he gets Ruck to further demonstrate his ability to impersonate others.
I'm not sure how this helps anything.
Nah, what does he do?
He imitates Andrea, then Corby himself, and finally Christine.
Oh, but that's not a good move.
He's gone too far.
Yes, he's
crossed the line.
Reprimanded, as he is not to mock her. It wasn't mocking her.
Well, no, but Kirk steps in here quite cleverly, and when Ruck is instructed by Corby not to mock Christine, Kirk gets Corby to also issue a command to Ruck to always obey any orders that Christine might give.
And also not to harm her.
Indeed.
And at this, Corby asks for 24 hours to convince Kirk of his work.
Doctor, do I need to be a prisoner to be convinced?
What would your first duty be upon return to your vessel? Report! Do you realize the number of discoveries lost because of superstition, of ignorance, of a layman's inability to comprehend?
A simple layman's question, Doctor. Where is my other crewman? Alive? Dead?
Ruck was programmed to protect my experiments. The logic of his machine mind saw a danger to me.
Where is my other crewman?
Ruck destroyed them both. But totally against my wishes, I assure you.
He's an android? Like Brown?
More complex than Brown. Much superior. I was left here by the old ones.
Ruck was still tending the machinery when we arrived here. How many centuries? Even Ruck doesn't know. With his help, with the records I could find, we built Brown.
You've convinced me, Doctor. You've convinced me that you're dangerous.
What's that thing from, is it Marvel?
What thing?
That sounds like Rock. My kid watches it, one of the...
It sounds like rock.
Yeah.
Groot.
Groot.
He's a tree.
Is he? Yeah, Rock looked quite tree-like.
Yeah, but we've learned here that he's a machine.
Oh yeah, not a tree. Well,
he wants to be a tree.
Trees are nature's machines.
Okay.
At the end of that clip, we see Kirk being ragdolled by
That's the
Rock.
word that I wrote down. Absolutely ragdolled. It's not the first time, and Kirk doesn't seem to learn that he is not able to escape from Rock.
No, and only Corby's intervention prevents Rock from destroying him. We now head out to the main communal area, I suppose.
Yeah, Andrea is a bit confused.
Yeah, Christine is annoyed again by the entrance of Andrea, and Andrea doesn't understand why, especially since she's now with Corby.
Yeah, it's quite a strange moment here, because Christine demands to know what's happened to Kirk, and we look over, he's at the other side of the same room with Corby and Rock.
Well, they come in.
Do they come in?
No, they do. I think they've come in because they're a little bit before that, where she's unwilling or unable to answer how she can love Corby but not trust him.
Okay.
There is a little bit of interaction here, and Andrea clearly has no concept of jealousy and doesn't understand why Christine doesn't like her using Roger's name.
Roger lets it be known that she should just stop. Doesn't matter why.
Yes, from now on it's Dr. Corby, which Andrea accepts without any complaint or question. So again, that's interesting. That hints at something.
Yep. Roger points out to Christine here that Kirk is fine, as she can see, but he just can't allow Kirk to report anything back to the ship at this point.
Yeah, and I think Corby says he just needs, again, he reiterates that he needs some time to show the value of his work, and suggests that they start with Andrea. And I think with a catty smile, Christine agrees. She really doesn't like Andrea, and I can understand why.
Yes, quite clear why. Because we learn now that Andrea too is an android.
Yes, this is where everything starts to get a bit dodgy.
Yeah, the purpose of Andrea the android, what do you think?
She's a sex robot.
Yeah, it's quite apparent.
Yeah.
And we heard at the top of the show about the warm flesh and everything else. There's no... She doesn't have... If you were building a robot to perform manual tasks, it would be built differently.
Yes. You wouldn't have to make her a gorgeous brunette. You wouldn't have to dress her scantily.
Nope.
It reminded me a little bit of Polly in Rocky 4, where he's got a robot and he immediately changes her voice to be that of a seductive woman. Hi, Polly. Can I get you another beer? It's like, yeah.
Guys with iPhones have changed the Siri voice to the female one. But worse.
Well, yeah. Corby, it doesn't help himself at any point in here when he's trying to...
His explanations just are... Because he's so obviously lying.
Yes, everything just points to him having created a sex robot. He boasts about Andrea's physical attributes that he's created, and like even Christine notes the potential. I think that's what we heard we did in the clip at the start. He tries to lie his way out of it by insisting that it's only a computer and it'll only do what he's again, this isn't helping.
No, he's digging a deep hole. And I think Christine uses tea time language when she calls her a mechanical geisha.
Yes. He actually tries to say that, Christine, you should understand, because you're a trained scientist, I suppose, as opposed to an untrained scientist. And he talks about not loving a machine. And Christine directly asks if he did. And I like that word, did you love it? That's code, isn't it?
Of course.
Have you loved this?
How long have you been loving this?
How many times a night do you love it? And he doesn't, again, he can't help himself here. He claims that she only obeys orders. Yes,
his dream woman, essentially. Yeah,
you've built this gorgeous robot, put her in a revealing outfit. You'd say that it's only does what you want it to do. I mean, there are people these days who are or have. You can buy these things online.
Probably not quite as sophisticated.
Not quite. They're getting there.
Are they? I've not been researching this.
From what I've seen, the look.
I lost touch when they stopped showing Eurotrash.
Yeah, I suppose. No, I've seen there's a few around yet. So, this guy, he's just built a sex robot. Here's what I would do if I was Christine. I would say, Roger, is this a sex robot? No, it's not. It's not. It's okay. Why did you build one that looks so attractive? Well,
To see if I could.
To see if I could, yes. Roger, why did you put her in revealing clothes? Well, we ran out of material. Okay. Roger, this is just for doing, normal tasks like, you've got Lurch here or whatever you had there, Brown. You gave her breast, didn't you, Roger? Well, yeah, had to do that. Just to make her look. Roger, I'm going to ask you something here. Roger, is this a sex robot? No. Okay. So, Roger, if I remove her trousers, Roger, does she have genitalia?
Yes, you're anatomically correct, because there would be no purpose for that.
Absolutely no purpose. Have you given her a vagina, Roger? Roger, have you built a sex... Yes.
You have to confess.
He would. Guaranteed he has...
He's essentially confessed anyway with his own words here.
Yeah.
He tries to propose an experiment to show that she's absolutely not his sex robot by having her kiss Kirk.
Yeah, it gets worse, yes. Kiss Kirk and then spank him. He's created a kissing, spanking machine here. Roger. Listen, hats off to Roger.
And Kirk is all over this. He's not letting him off the hook at all. For a start, he can sense from Andrea's behaviour that she does have emotions.
Yeah.
And she's not an unemotional machine.
Mm-hmm.
And he raises with Corby Brown's emotional actions earlier when we know that he was an android.
Yeah.
Corby promises that the answers will be forthcoming, but doesn't provide them.
Kirk asked a good question. If they only obey Corby, why did Brown try to shoot him and why did Rook kill two men?
Exactly.
Is that his request?
Because they're emotional.
Is it because they're emotional, they're doing it off their own bat, or is it because they're emotional and they've been told to protect, they want to protect, or they've been told to order to protect Corby?
I think what Kirk's getting at is that they have their own feelings and their own thoughts. They're not just acting entirely according to orders. Anyway, we'll find out more. In the androidification room. Yes,
we cut to Rook placing a mummified type.
This is another horror type creature, isn't it?
Yeah, it's this person on a table as Corby enters with Christine, and he tells her that this is how an android is made. This isn't how an android's made.
That's how he makes an android.
Yeah. We zoom out to see that Kirk is on the other side of a circular table, naked and strapped down and across from this mummy.
Christine is shocked, stunned and horrified by this. This isn't the Roger she remembers.
No, the Roger who she remembered was definitely not the type to build a sex robot.
No.
It might have been, to be fair. He looks the sort.
Anyway.
Andrea turns on the equipment and the table begins to spin faster and faster.
Roger says that the android they create will share Kirk's memories, attitudes and abilities. But take orders, presumably?
Yeah. Christine wants to know what he is playing at, and he says that he's doing this to, I suppose, make his point, rather than have them leave and beam up just with a theory about what he's up to. I suppose he's trying to prove his science as opposed to look like a crackpot.
It's quite clear now this is why he wanted Kirk to beam down alone in the first place.
Yes.
Going back to the opening scene of the episode.
Uh-huh.
This was his plan all along. He always intended to create an android Kirk. For whatever reason, we can get to that later on, but I don't think this is a development. I don't think this is a reaction to what's happened. This is what his plan was.
Mm-hmm. After a while, the process has finished and we are left with two Kirks.
Well, before that, though, Kirk attempts to corrupt the process.
Does he?
Yes, just as he's about to pass out from the spinning, he half sits up and shouts about Spock being a half-breed who interferes.
Yeah, this is the first time, but not the last in this episode, where there's a bit of racism in here.
Yes, but there's a purpose for this time.
Okay.
Anyway, yes, Kirk passes out, the duplicate wakes up.
And even Christine can't identify which is which.
It's because they spun it, it's like the old cops trick. It's like, oh, which one's the real Kirk? The one under the red hat?
Corby tries to explain with some pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo before starting the process of replicating the mental elements or aspects of Kirk's personality, and he claims that everything will be identical. So much so that the original could be replaced, swapped out.
In theory.
Mm-hmm. This part looks a bit more distressing, doesn't it? It's not just a case of spinning them around. I think there's a bit of anguish. I'm not sure on whose part.
An agonizer that he's put in there just to make it seem more dramatic.
Yeah.
Probably didn't need to hurt him, he just thought it'd be fun.
Shatner probably asked for that so he could do a bit of growling.
Show his acting chops.
We're now in the dining area where Andrea lays out some food. And 2 points about this. It's this same sort of Lego food they always eat. Luminous green cubes.
Space food,
yeah. Now,
well, to be fair, these folk have been underground for 5 years. They're not going to have fresh food.
The tables and chairs were like old school Victorian furniture.
That's probably what the civilization who were there before had. Either that, or maybe they can be created in the same way the androids are. Like maybe that technology can create, if it can create flesh, presumably they can adapt it to create furniture.
So why would they create furniture from?
It's just what he likes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kirk and
Andrea, what does she inform Christine?
Oh, she's been reprogrammed to please Christine.
Don't get me started.
I don't think Christine's interested in being pleased by Andrea in any sense.
Oh. Kirk joins them.
Yeah, he's still got his uniform on. He seems to have recovered from his ordeal.
And they have a discussion about where her loyalties may lie until things take a dramatic turn.
Yes, Christine is stunned to realise that she's been talking to the android Kirk all along.
Yeah, I liked the reveal. I liked how it was built up. And
were you shocked?
I wasn't expecting that at this point.
Yeah. It's quite creepy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you can just substitute somebody for another person and people don't realise.
Yeah. In a different show, in a different format, this story could easily be turned into something, more horrific.
Yeah. I mean, you get a bit of that when you go into Deep Space Nine, towards the end, when they've got shapeshifters who can assume human form and infiltrate people. That's...
Yeah.
Replace people at high levels and things like that. It becomes quite a good storyline in that series.
At this point, Corby, Rock and the real Kirk enter, with him now dressed in Corby's colours. And he's not acting as upset as I would have assumed.
No, he maybe just quite likes his shell suit.
He does, however, face off against his artificial self.
Well, there's one difference between us. I'm hungry. The difference is your weakness, Captain, not mine.
One at a time, gentlemen. Captain?
Eating is a pleasure, sir. Unfortunately, one you will never know. Perhaps. But I will never starve, sir. He's an exact duplicate?
In every detail.
What about memory? Tell me about Sam. George Samuel Kirk, your brother. Only you call him Sam. He saw me off on this mission. Yes, with his wife and 3 sons. He said he was being transferred to Earth Colony 2 Research Station. No, Captain. He said he was continuing his research and that he wanted to be transferred to Earth Colony 2.
You might as well try to outthink a calculating machine.
Obviously, I can't. But we do have some interesting differences.
Totally unimportant ones. You may leave now. You haven't guessed the rest? Not even you, Christine? What you saw was only a machine. Only half of what I could have accomplished. Do you understand? By continuing the process, I could have transferred you, your very consciousness, into that android. Your soul, if you wish. All of you. In android form, a human being can have practical immortality. Can you understand what I'm offering mankind?
Programming. Different word. But the same old promises made by Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, Hitler, Ferris, Maltuvus.
Interesting. Fascinating.
You might say. I thought the special effects with the 2 Kirks were very well done. I don't know that you could do that better, even now.
Had no issue with that, yeah. Corby, this is the type of scientific breakthrough that, in the wrong hands, would be horrendous. If you could use it for evil, but you have to consider the positive.
Yeah. Do you think someone needs to go back in time and kill baby Corby?
No, I don't. I don't think he's got bad intentions at this point.
Okay.
If you could have an exact replica of yourself, Ian, who would always be... If you could transport your
well,
being
it's not
into
a
another...
replica, is it? You're replacing yourself with an artificial version. It depends how well they can be maintained. So if it could be maintained into the future, that's great. But I think, as they quite rightly address in this episode, there would be a stigma about it.
Of course. But let's say we could take your being and just put you into effectively take your head off, okay, and put it on another body. Take your brain out. If your brain was your being, you put another body. Yeah. Would you be happy enough with that, and you'd never be ill or sick? And
No, because everyone I knew would die. And
no, but we're talking, we've got technology, therefore, to do this with everyone. So that,
but I think a lot of folk wouldn't want that. A lot of folk don't want to live forever.
But in that case, you could die.
Yeah.
That'd be your choice. And
I think that there would be a stigma attached to it. I think if you did this, folk would view you as less human.
Yes, but that would only last
until everyone was doing
it. So, yeah.
And then what do you do with overpopulation?
But you're an android. You could easily control. You don't have to have kids. There's not as much reason to have kids because you're not trying to keep the human race going.
Everyone's just in their 30s and 40s.
That's
forever.
just it, yeah. And I suppose you could ask to be, if the technology improves. I mean, you don't want to be transported, replicated if you're in your 90s necessarily. You just get the same problems.
Yeah.
But if you could put yourself back into your body that when you were 30 or whatever, that'd be. Lots of people in their 90s would say, yeah, give me another run at it. A 30-year-old body, my own 30-year-old body.
Don't know.
It's not like creating... There is a touch of the old master race about it, but it's not really.
Yeah, because not everyone who got replicated would be fitting a particular design.
Exactly. Everyone would have that's where, in the wrong hands, they would only replicate what they wanted to replicate. That's where the trouble would go. But in theory, if everyone could just create their own Android version, then...
And you've got the issue of they're programmable. Who's controlling that?
Big government. I don't know.
Well, we'll find out later in this episode what happens, but yes.
Okay.
There are, as Kirk points out, there's always a payoff. There's always the debt comes due. There's some sort of other foot to come down.
Yeah, I mean, my point is, I don't think Corby's necessarily an evil mastermind. I think he's... well, put it this way, if you could invent this or create this, or you did discover this, you would be you'd have every prize under the sun. You'd be the greatest scientist of all. It's like someone who could invent time travel. It doesn't matter how it would be used or the implications.
It's a scientific breakthrough.
Yeah, it's like splitting the atom, the atomic bomb.
He's found this, though. He's not developed this himself. He's found this technology intact already.
Yeah, it's true.
So I suppose you could get credit for discovering it rather than for developing it.
Yeah. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, Corby essentially thinks that he can create a utopia here.
Well, no, he wants to change current life into a utopia. So he wants to go somewhere quiet, develop these androids in private so that no one knows they exist, and then infiltrate them into society one by one until there's so many that nothing can be done about it.
Yeah, that's not great.
No, it's not.
That backdoor.
So he's got this entire galaxy full of these androids that he has control over, infiltrating all walks of life.
Kirk, as Corby is detailing this plan, or how he wants Kirk to help, is loosening a piece of rope which has conveniently been tied around the chair that he's sitting on. And as Corby asks him if he is up for helping him on this mission, Kirk makes a leap for him and threatens to choke him.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But he uses this opportunity to escape into the caverns, and he's just left Chapel behind. He obviously trusts that Corby won't harm her, or doesn't care.
Well, I think it's a situation that if he doesn't do this, then they're both doomed anyway, so he may as well make a run for it and see if he can...
Save yourself.
Yeah. Corby then gives Ruck an order to protect and signals him to go after Kirk. Now, I'm not sure if this was an order to protect himself or to protect Kirk.
I think the implication is he should kill Kirk.
I
mean, he's just said, we didn't talk about it, but a second ago he said he built this android not to replace Kirk, but to impress him. But he's built him to replace him. Yeah,
so Ruck goes after Kirk, who is then followed by Christine shouting, "No!" in the caves.
Yes, Chapel orders Ruck to stop and not to kill Kirk, but he doesn't stop, despite the fact he was told to follow her orders.
Correct. And we cut to Kirk hiding and preparing to fight by...
He gets two hands around this sort of protrusion from the ceiling.
Yes, he yanks down a massive dildo. I mean, there's no other way to describe this. It's something you would find in a sex shop.
It just looks like a normal stalactite to me.
Does it? Does it indeed?
You think it's got phallic qualities?
not. I mean, phallic is more subtle. Phallic is just something that stands up and is perhaps erect. This is shaped like a member. It's quite clearly and Shatner must have been in this. He's seen this and said, "Yeah, it's fine. Let's do it for a laugh." This is back in the 60s.
See if we can get it past the censors.
But the set designer, the prop designer here knew exactly what they were doing. Good on them.
You think this is creditable?
Yeah.
You should be celebrating this?
Yes, definitely.
Filth.
Yeah. A massive dildo
PG-rated episode.
If you can get away with it.
If you can get away with a giant dildo, you should. That's your moral of the story.
Yes.
And what's he planning to do with it when he shouts rock over?
Well, what would you do with a massive dildo? How would you use that as a weapon?
I've never considered the possibility.
Okay. We don't have to consider that because Rock fools Kirk by putting on Christine's voice.
Yeah, Kirk should have been smarter.
Yeah. And he does try and attack him with this dildo, but ends up hanging by his fingertips over a void.
Bit of a damp squib.
Yep.
Rock considers whether to kill Kirk at this point, but I suspect Christine's order is ringing in his mind because he does not.
No, he eventually pulls him to safety, and we're back up on the Enterprise, and for some reason, Kirk is aboard.
Yes, presumably Android Kirk.
Ah, well, yeah, we find that out.
He ignores Spock and is followed by Spock at that point.
Yeah, and I think this is where we get some further racial insult.
Well, it's not. This is what Kirk's planted this thought in the android's mind, so that when Spock speaks to the android, it uses this racial epithet.
Okay.
That's how it's exposed as a phony.
It's not just that, it's his general demeanour, his attitude.
Yeah, Spock was already wary of this guy from just ignoring him in the first place. Yeah. Which makes no sense. This android's got the memories of all their previous interactions. Why would he act this way?
I know.
Anyway, and why would he not realise that he doesn't call Spock those things? But anyway,
mm-hmm.
he does.
He informs him that he will be leaving to return with Corby and other members of the party shortly. But Spock, knowing that something is up, arranges to meet with security in the transporter room shortly after Android Kirk has beamed back down. This is a bit of a waste of time as well, because he doesn't do anything.
No, he does. He gets information.
Who?
Android Kirk does.
No, I mean, Spock beaming back down to help doesn't...
Well, he shows up at the end.
Yeah,
it's too late. Android Kirk has... or he is now back in Corby's lab. He's identified Midas 5 as a good place to breed an android army, a bit like Camino in the Star Wars prequels, which people have seen that would.
What I was going to say, yeah, just like Camino.
Yep. Corby is pleased with this selection, and we see Kirk and Andrea in the bedroom.
Yes, now, this is the real Kirk.
It is, we think.
He is lying down when Andrea comes in, and the orders her to kiss him, which she initially does.
Yes, and then afterwards she goes to repeat her slap that she delivered the previous occasion, but Kirk stops her. Yeah,
he's quite rough with her here.
Yeah, well, he's trying to find out what she is, I think, because he's got this sense that maybe she isn't as simple a machine as Corby makes out.
Yeah, I mean, he's so rough with her that even as an android, she's not happy.
She looks a bit squished.
Yeah, and she pulls away, saying that she's not programmed for him.
Yeah, so again, emotions are coming out here.
Yeah, and he's then quite creepy, as when she is leaving, he presses up against her and suggests that she's confused.
Yeah.
You know you want to.
She doesn't. She leaves.
Runs off.
He uses the same basic technique on Rock.
Yes, he can't follow her because Rock enters.
Yes, without any of the kissing. He tries to draw an emotional response from Rock, but what he does is he goes from Corby's own account of the situation. Obviously, Rock was here alone. He had survived beyond the death of all the organic creatures and all the other androids.
Mm-hmm.
So Kirk tries to draw this story back out from Rock. How did this come to be? Why did you have to end up in this situation? And it turns out that the computers, the androids, had to overthrow the old ones, as they call them, the organic creatures who were there before, the ones who created them.
Yeah.
So it's although they don't directly address this is a classic AI gains intelligence, kills all the people.
Yeah, that's the fear that we as humans have.
Yeah.
Or some people do. Some maybe worry a
It's
little bit
one
too
that
much.
gets explored time and time again in Star Trek and other science fiction as
Yeah.
well.
It does well, I think, getting inside Rock's head.
Yeah, and Rock does reach that conclusion. Survival must cancel out programming. He doesn't need to accept orders when they threaten his own survival.
Mm-hmm. So Kirk suggests a scenario that androids were not just satisfied with being logical computers and wanted more. They wanted pride and a desire to survive and have emotion, etc.
Yeah, and they were prevented in this by the creators.
Yeah. So I think we get to a point where Rock admits that his or their creators became fearful of the androids and started turning them off. Kirk leaps in this and suggests that Corby might do that to him. But rather than accept this, what does Rock say?
The suggestion then is that Kirk is the risk, this outside factor, X factor almost being brought into the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of an equation is important to Rock.
So Kirk tries to raise the stakes. He tries to make him see that Corby is his danger. But at this, he is grabbed by the giant.
And Rock says that survival must cancel out programming. And Kirk encourages this line of thought, saying that you can't protect someone who's trying to destroy you. At which point, Corby enters.
With Christine, and is shocked to find that Rock is now against him.
Yes, Rock says that Corby brought Kirk amongst them. He brought the inferior ones, which had been cleansed. He's brought evil back.
Yeah, and so Corby has no option.
He shoots him and kills him, vaporizes him.
Yeah, so how come Brown didn't get vaporized?
Must have been a lower setting, like we talked about.
Yeah, so I presume he's dead then, yeah?
That's him, Rock's gone.
We are now in the living quarters, where Kirk tries to disarm Corby. And during the scuffle, a revelation's made.
Yes, Corby's hand gets trapped in a door, revealing mechanical parts. He's a robot.
Oh.
Roger the robot. Were you surprised?
A little bit.
Yeah, you didn't expect it.
Well, so.
You kind of half expected it, but
They're all
entirely.
They're all robots. He tries to explain to the shocked Christine that he had no other choice. He was dying. He tells her that his hand can be repaired. He is still the same person that she loved, although she is understandably not convinced by this.
No, and at this point they hear something.
Yeah, an alarm tone. And Corby communicates with Andrea to tell her that there is someone around, and Kirk whispers to Christine that it must be Spock.
Yes. So Andrea now has instructions to protect. She doesn't really know what she's doing. She goes looking for a phaser, I think.
Yeah, I think Corby tells her to get a weapon and to deal with it.
Yes.
And she, I think, firstly stumbles across Android Kirk.
She does. She asks him to kiss her, and he refuses.
Yeah, I don't... Why? Why?
She thinks it's original Kirk.
Right.
Who's escaped.
Mm-hmm.
And then feels, I think she must feel rejected by him at this point.
So what response is she looking for? If she asks this a Kirk for a kiss and he kisses her, what does that mean?
She might take his side, I guess.
Really?
I don't know. It's not clear to me, because she certainly has emotions. Something's going on with her. And she sees that Corby's with Christine. So it could be that, or it could just be that she's very confused. But in any event, she is knocked back by Android Kirk and she shoots him.
Yes.
Disintegrates him.
Before heading to the living quarters herself, where Corby is still trying to plead his case that he is the same man. It's all going wrong here. Give up.
Yes, Andrea comes in and she almost immediately recognises her error.
She does, and she certainly senses that there is a change in the dynamic.
I am not programmed for alarms. I listened to your instructions, obeyed them as stated.
She killed the android, Corby. The same way you killed Ruck. Is this your perfect world? Your flawless beings, killing off one another? Aren't you doing exactly what you hate most in humans? Killing with no more concern than when you turn off a light?
I'm not a computer. Test me. Ask me to solve any... Equate... Transmit. Christine, Christine, let me prove myself. Does this make such a difference?
Don't you see, Roger? Everything you've done has proved it isn't you.
I am Roger Corby!
Then prove it. Give me that phaser gun. If there's any human left in you, give it to me.
No. You will never understand. I constructed a perfect being. Tested it. Proved it. Proved it. Proved it.
So Kirk does get the phaser from Corby and asks Andrea to pass hers over as well.
Yeah, but she refuses, claiming she has to protect, and turns to Corby. I think at this point reveals it's more than protection. She loves him and kisses him, or tries to kiss him.
Yes. At this point, both of them have their hand on the phaser. I don't think it's clear which one of them pulls the trigger.
I think it's Corby.
Is it Corby?
Yeah.
Disintegrates them both.
Yes, after he says that she cannot love. She's not human.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Quite severe. Could have let her down more gently than that.
And then, as dramatically as possible, Spock comes in just in time to have missed everything.
Yeah, he's a bit late, isn't he? And we see Christine, I think she's breaking down, even though Roger was not Roger, he was the android.
Well, Spock asks where Corby is, and Kirk says he was never there.
Well, he was there at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, but not while they were there.
And we're back up on the bridge for the finale.
Yeah, Christine's going to continue on the Enterprise, and she's certain she's made the right decision.
Yeah, she was given a choice, which is interesting.
Yeah, she could have gone back to some other work. Maybe it was too much for her.
Yeah, but I thought it was good of Kirk, after her showing that she didn't necessarily have complete loyalty to him, that he might have said, listen, I don't think we can work together anymore. I think you need to find another
I don't think she did anything against Kirk, though.
No, earlier on she said, do not put me in the position where I've got to choose between Corby and yourself.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind the type of scrapes that they're constantly finding themselves in, you need someone who's going to be dedicated to you, I think, or your
to the ship anyway.
Your cause, yeah.
Spock takes issue with the message that Kirk sent through the android.
He does.
And Kirk's taking a Machiavellian view of it to this point. I think this is actually almost kudos from Spock.
Yeah.
He's crediting Kirk with having delivered this message and saved the day, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk doesn't apologise for it. He smiles and says that he will remember.
Yeah, the next time he's replaced by an android.
Yeah, or a similar situation. And they head off into space. So,
yeah,
better episode than last week for sure. Andrea was a high point.
You liked Andrea? She's quite wee, actually.
Was she?
She looked quite wee.
Yeah, petite.
Most of my trivia we've kind of touched on already about the twists and about the AI overthrowing people, and then would you transfer your consciousness into an artificial body? You asked me that earlier on. The old ones, H.P. Lovecraft reference, and we'll talk about why that's relevant. But in his work, the old ones were ancient omnipotent beings that dominated human life.
Mm-hmm. Why is it relevant?
It's to do with the writer of the episode, who I'll tell you about in about 1 minute's time.
Right. Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. It felt to me that this should have been Chapel's first episode.
Yes.
They should have had this one, and then because it doesn't really fit in with her saying she loves Spock in Naked Time.
Yeah, because back then that basically the truth serum brought out your true emotions.
Yeah, so she should have been talking about Roger.
Exactly.
Anyway, there were some scripting issues with this one. Gene Roddenberry was rewriting, even during filming. It ran over quite significantly, a couple of days, I think, in time for filming. Okay, standard trivia. Original air date 20th October 1966. It was directed by James Goldstone, a name that will be familiar to you from his work on the pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Mm-hmm.
That was his only other Star Trek episode. Some suggestion that this overrun on this episode contributed to his not being asked back.
Seems a tad unfair, but business is business.
That's it. If it's expensive, then it's expensive. Okay, the writer, as I promised, it was written by renowned novelist Robert Bloch.
Ah, I'm familiar with that name.
Albeit with significant rewrites that I've just talked about. It's the first of his 3 original series Star Trek episodes. He was a protege of Lovecraft himself, and he wrote over 30 novels and hundreds of short stories on top of his film and TV work.
What's he most famous for?
Psycho.
Indeed.
He wrote Psycho, and he died at the age of 77 in 1994. Sherry Jackson played Andrea.
She did.
That's her only role in Star Trek.
Oh.
She was a child star. She grew up in front of the nation as Terry Williams on the Danny Thomas Show, and she saw roles such as this one as a step away from that towards more grown-up work. She also appeared in Batman, Starsky and Hutch, and Charlie's Angels, amongst many other shows. She was involved in the design of her outfit. There were very specific rules from the censors about what they were allowed to show and not show. You weren't allowed any side boob. So that's why it covers that perfectly, despite the fact that it's trying to be revealing. I think nowadays it would be even more revealing.
That was quite classy, I thought.
It had its pieces. Michael Strong.
No, let's keep going with Andrea just now.
No, there's no more about Andrea.
There is, because I'd never heard of Andrea until Sherry Jackson, until I watched this episode then.
And now you know everything about
I know quite
Sherry
a lot
Jackson.
about her, yeah.
I don't know anything else. Tell me what else you know about Sherry Jackson.
Not much. Apparently she was in Playboy.
You say this every week. Last week you were talking about Playboy as well.
Yeah, well, can't help it. It's not me. It's Roddenberry.
Going through your back collections. Oh, it's relevant for the podcast this week.
No. Yeah, she's still alive.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. And I'd read that she didn't go to a convention in Vegas because someone else was going to be there. They didn't say who or why, but...
It wasn't Roger, he's dead. We'll come to that in a second.
Okay.
Michael Strong.
I know that name.
Played Roger Corby. Didn't appear in any other Star Trek episodes, but here's our Columbo connection of the week. He showed up opposite Dick Van Dyke in Negative Reaction.
Hoffman, I think it was, a sergeant.
His other TV show appearances included programmes like Man from U.N.C.L.E., Planet of the Apes, and Hawaii Five-0, but he died quite young from cancer at just 62 in 1980.
A distinctive look.
Yes, I liked his I am Roger Corby. It goes well with I am Captain Kirk from The Enemy Within. You could play them against each other for about half an hour on a loop.
I won't.
Someone should make that YouTube video.
Yeah.
Send it in.
Okay.
Ted Cassidy played Ruck in this episode, the sort of androgynous android.
He was very familiar. I wouldn't say androgynous, no.
He spoke with a woman's voice half the time.
No one's looking at that huge...
He had massive eyeshadow and makeup on.
That doesn't mean to say you're not a man. That doesn't make you a female.
He had a dress on.
No. But men can wear dresses as well, Ian. And makeup.
I'm just saying that this is not... He's an android, so he doesn't have to have a sex or a gender.
If all the people out there, this 7 foot, whatever he was, hulking man with a massive jawline, yeah, no one was looking at that going, I wonder if that's a woman or not. Yeah, that was a guy.
It's neither. It's a robot.
Yeah.
Anyway, he played Rock. He's best known probably for Lurch in the Addams Family, you might think.
Yeah.
I think you called him Lurch 8 times in the podcast. He also appeared in things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The $6 Million Man. He doesn't appear in any other Star Trek episodes, but he's got 2 voice roles in future episodes.
Does he?
He was quite young as well when he died, just 46. In 1979, he had complications following heart surgery. You always wonder, big guys like that, if it's connected to their physique.
Yeah, when you get to that sort of freakish...
Bit of strain in the heart.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm a podcaster, not a doctor.
Not qualified, but you've...
Yeah, you can guess. Speculate randomly. Okay, 2 security men who die early on in this episode. There's
Matthews and Rayburn Barnburn. Yeah.
not much trivia about them, but they were the first red shirts to die on screen, which may come up again. A little bit of trivia here that I wanted to share from I was reading The Making of Star Trek this week, and I came across a nugget that I thought you might enjoy. So bear in mind this was written in 1968, contemporaneous with the show. It's a note explaining that Kirk's meant to be in his early 30s during this season. But they add, and I quote, "The way medical science is progressing today, it seems reasonable to assume men will live longer. They will remain young and virile for a longer period of time. It wasn't too many years ago that if you were a man of 46, you should be dead. If you weren't dead at 46, you were probably trying to retire. Today, 46-year-old men are riding surfboards, motorcycles, and perhaps next week, planning to take up skydiving.
Crazy.
300 years from now, who knows?" You looking to retire at 46 yourself, Jenny?
I'd love to, yeah. I won't be taking up with skydiving, mind you.
No?
No.
Not your thing?
No, I'd be dead by 47.
Looking at international titles, unless you've got other trivia to bring in?
No.
Let's talk about Andrea some more.
If you want, yeah, she was lovely.
The photos don't work on the podcast, I'm sorry.
Okay.
International titles. There's a couple of interesting ones. Germans go with Der alte Traum, The Old Dream. Interesting one.
Yeah.
Not sure where they came up with that from.
Well, I was expecting that the foreign translations might make more sense, because I was disappointed with this week's title in English.
It doesn't really make sense,
No, it
does
doesn't.
it? I know it's obviously a play on...
Yeah, of course, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Italians went for Gli androidi del Dr. Corby, Dr. Corby's androids.
Well, that's...
A bit of a giveaway.
Yeah.
And then the Japanese writers, maybe in a rush this week.
Oh, come on. They're always good as well.
They've been good most weeks, but this week they've gone for Computer Ninjen, which means the computer man. Oh, computer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. The computer man.
Yeah, I still think they're better than the original titles.
Also a giveaway of the major plot point, though.
Yeah.
Next week, episode 8 of season 1, Mary. Mary's quite Scottish way to say it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, social media.
Myri.
It could be. Mirai. In the meantime, we're all over social media in the usual spots at Trek Podcast, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. You'll find our YouTube channel probably still running for now, and we are at www.astartrekpodcast.com. We would love to hear your thoughts on these episodes, your memories of them, your own reflections on the things that we've talked about, and what you think about the podcast as well, if you feel like it. And we'll see you there, and we'll see you next week.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye bye.